thank you all for joining us today. This is my first time at TiEcon, so thanks for having me. I'll start with a quick overview of Maven Ventures. I think, especially for early stage entrepreneurs in the room, anytime somebody's going to be kind of opining about your own business where you're the expert and giving you advice and guidance on that, I think it's important to know the context and the lens that they already bring into the conversation. So Maven Ventures, we invest in software that's used by millions of consumers every single day to make their lives better. We identify truly driven founders who have a vision worth fighting for, and we think they can build $1 billion company. We've invested in 32 companies over the last 6 years. We're currently investing out of our third fund. We've seen, of those 30 companies, 8 exits, including the ones you've seen here. We were early seed investors in all of these companies. Cruise Automation, which was purchased by General Motors for over $1 billion. Zoom, which recently IPO'd on the NASDAQ at over $18 billion market valuation. And Chariot, which was acquired by Ford. Our strategy is to focus on seed investing. We invest usually $750K to $1 million. We're incredibly hands-on, and we have a really concentrated approach, so we only invest in 5 to 6 companies a year. We look at about 2,000 companies every single year in order to find those 5 to 6 businesses. So looking at all those companies over the last several years has given us our own view of what we think it takes to partner with a company at the very earliest stages and what those most successful companies look like. So with that, I'm going to share the Maven Ventures list of the top 10 reasons we think your startup can succeed. The number one thing that we look for in an early stage company that can really set the business apart for success is what we call a vision worth fighting for. That means identifying something that's worth all the time, the energy, the money, and the resources that you'll be channeling into your business for 10 years of your life, spending a bunch of your own money and time and energy, that of your investors, and that of your team. The most important piece of that is that it's a really meaningful vision, and that's because when the days get really hard, what's going to motivate your company and what's going to motivate your team to stick it through? The example I'll give here is Cruise Automation. When we first invested in the company in 2014, they had a really meaningful vision to save 1 million lives that are lost every year in vehicular accidents, over 30,000 of those lives right here in the US alone, and also get rid of all of the frustrations that we feel from our commutes, traffic, and also the environmental impact. And one of the things that my goal with this presentation today is with all these 10 reasons to give really tactical advice and anecdotes so that you can see kind of in practicality, what are we really thinking about and what really are those things that will set your business up for success so that you can apply those directly to your company when you go back to work today, tomorrow, Monday. We know there's no weekends in startup land. So that's kind of number one, is a vision worth fighting for. And General Motors agreed with that vision when they purchased Cruise, but it was really just the beginning of this really amazing revolution we've seen around autonomous vehicles that we think has the potential to not only be an amazing vision, but also really save the lives of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of people around the world. The second aspect of the vision worth fighting for is that it's a problem that really needs fixing. So we invested in a company called Carrot, which provides fertility benefits to employees through their employers. And when we first started looking at the investment in Carrot, it actually was a lot less about the fertility industry in particular. What we started seeing was this major demographic trend of men and women getting married later in life, which means they're starting their families later. So this is a graph that shows the average age of first marriage for men and women. And as you can see, that's increasing pretty rapidly. And over the last few decades, it's been growing much faster than we've ever seen in the history of our country. So we identified this business in Carrot that would really help people to take a new lens and a new approach to their family planning and truly believe that that's a problem that needs fixing. And so as you think about your own vision worth fighting for, is it something that's really meaningful? And is it a problem that really needs fixing? And something to be aware of is what we like to call roadkill. So if you're thinking about your own specific vision, and there's a lot of other companies that have tried and failed to achieve this vision, it's possible that your team and technology really can stand out, but oftentimes that might mean that you still have some work to do on really identifying and articulating what is that vision worth fighting for. So once you have that vision worth fighting for, the second thing that I think will help set up a startup for success is the founding team. And you need both. You need an amazing vision and an amazing founding team. So there are exceptions, but we've seen in a lot of our most successful outcomes, the founding team is 2 people. There's a CEO who can see the vision and sell the vision, and there's a CTO that can help them build it. I'll give a great example, a company that's called Hello Heart. The CEO is an amazing woman. Her name is Mayan, and she's one of the best sellers and one of the best visionaries that I've ever met. And what's really unique about their business is they saw the opportunity to help people save hundreds and thousands of lives here in the US by actually tracking their blood pressure in a way that would help them avoid hypertensive crisis. It's a pretty amazing vision, but she also needed somebody that could actually build the product for her. So they have a really impressive technical team that's based in Israel. I think that's something an international conference like this can really draw from. They have their kind of sales and marketing, and their CEO is based here in Redwood City, and then the rest of their marketing and the rest of their engineering and product team is based in Tel Aviv. So they've got this really interesting combination of a visionary CEO who can see it and sell it, and then a great CTO that can lead the team and build the product. Once you have that vision and you've got the founding team, that's when it's really time to document your startup's culture. So Zappos is famous for having one of the most unique startup cultures that really help them recruit and retain talent in the early days. Something that's unique to the lens of Maven Ventures is that we think with even 2 people, with 2 co-founders, your company already has a culture. You maybe just haven't documented it yet. So we think it's really critical for entrepreneurs at the very early stages to actually write down, what is your culture? What's the mission that you're striving for? And what are the values that are unique to your business that can help you recruit and retain the best talent to bring that vision to life? We do practice what we preach. So 5 years ago, when we were just getting started, before we had 30 investments and multiple billion-dollar exits, we had a culture and we had a tiny team, and the 2 of us and 1 intern sat down and we identified what are the values that are unique to our culture at Maven and what do we think is going to help us to succeed. So we documented those and we live these and we hire for them, and it's a really important part of our culture in our screening process for any new employees. And we encourage all of our early stage companies to do the same. Have a list of 5 values just like this with descriptions that are specific to your business and what you're looking for. Once you have this team with a vision, and you've documented your culture, you might have a shot of achieving this thing that elusively is called product market fit. So I know in folks' minds, the first question I'm probably gonna get asked is, how do you define product market fit? And it's really challenging because there's no one definition. What I will say is you know it when you see it. So I recently sat down and had coffee with a really amazing woman who's been a fintech entrepreneur, and she's been part of 3 really early stage startups. And she was sharing with me, I think, a really unique way to think about it. And she said the one that had the best product market fit, she knew, because all they were trying to do was just keep the ship on track and build as fast as they could to deliver what their customers needed. So there's a really obvious pull from the customers instead of a push from your marketing team. And that's when they really identified that startup had product market fit that they'd never seen in any other company. So that's what you're looking for, is this idea of your customers are pulling from you, your product, as opposed to you having to push it onto them with marketing. And only once that product market fit has been achieved, the number 5 reason that your startup can be successful is really unlocking amazing growth. And I used to talk a lot about growth hacking, which is a term that still can be used for this, but I think that doesn't really account for all of the super hard work that goes into being the leader of the growth engine of your business. So what is growth marketing? In my view, this is the definition of growth marketing. It's a process of acquiring new customers, and it has a few different elements. Number 1 is it's really data-driven. So you're looking at what channels are we pursuing and what strategies are we pursuing and how is that returning customers to our business. The second thing is it's creative strategies that are often unpaid, very cheap or free strategies and channels. It's also incredibly organized, so thinking about what are all of the different channels and experiments that you might be leveraging at any one point. And it takes cross-functional work. It's not something that's solely held within marketing. It often takes engineering, product, and marketing working together to drive new customers to your business. So that's our definition of growth marketing. And there's a lot of different ways you can focus on your growth funnel. This is kind of a traditional acquisition funnel where you can look at the acquisition, which is where customers find you, activation, kind of when they decide to become your customer, retention, do they stick around? Referral, do they tell others? And revenue, how do you get paid? So when you're in a really early stage business, again, my lens is coming into this as a seed investor, we often look at the acquisition and retention, because when you can only focus on a couple levers in the really early days, you have to figure out what it is that's going to help your business to succeed. So having a really great sense of your acquisition and retention is a great place to start. As you think about growing the company, what do you grow? What's the metric that you're tracking? And oftentimes CEOs have a great dashboard of multiple things that they're looking at. And I'd really encourage everybody to think about finding that one kind of North Star metric. What is your one metric that matters if you could only choose one? Here's a couple of famous examples. I think Facebook was one of the first to put it on a consumer map, this idea of finding 7 friends in 7 days. And they knew a great customer for them was when they kind of fit that bill. Pinterest is another one, obviously recently went public, so a lot of this information is now out there and as a public company. I think even from the really early days, they had the most unique, like somebody that was called a weekly active repinner or clicker, which is honestly not something that would work in any other business. And so this idea of finding something that's unique, kind of a true North Star for your business that you can drive traffic toward. And a couple of thoughts as you think as an early stage founder about what might be the metric that matters. A couple of things like a quick checklist to think about as you're building that North Star metric. Number one is that it's unique to your business. So a lot of people might use revenue, MAU, DAU, which those might be the right metrics, but oftentimes you want to think about something like all of these that are actually unique and specific to your business. The second is that it's something that's in your control. So you want it to be something that you actually can influence and move it forward. The third thing is you want it to be aligned with how your customers get value from your product. Because if your customers are getting additional value, that should help you grow. So that should be the type of metric that you're looking for. And number 4 is related that if it grows, your business will be wildly successful. So shooting for a metric that you know that if you can influence that, if you can push it forward, if it continues to grow, your business will be incredibly successful. And unfortunately, there's not really a silver bullet. There's a lot of data that goes into this, a lot of new strategies that go into this, and a lot of thought that goes into your growing business. So there's not really kind of one silver bullet of growth hacking. It really is unique, and it's a lot of hard work towards your specific business. The sixth reason that your startup will succeed is something that we've called language market fit. I think it gets overlooked a lot in Silicon Valley, particularly when every company is named something like with a Lee or with an IO or with an AI at the end. But we think that language market fit is really important, and it's pervasive from everything from what you call your business, but also the words you use about it, the description you use, what your website says, and even what your team members and what your customers say, all fits into the language market fit. And it starts from the top. So my partner Jim helped to name the company Zoom in the really early days. And one of the reasons we love the name of the business Zoom is it just instantly instills this like reliability, quickness, and trust that's so core to their business. It's easy to spell, it's easy to say, and it also has this kind of usage as a verb. You can say like, do you want to Zoom me? Do you want to hop on Zoom? There's a lot of ways that you can use that name that kind of filters and goes throughout their employee and their community base. So that's what kind of a really great name entails, and it flows all the way through from top to bottom. Staying on the Zoom thread, the number 7 way that your startup will succeed is through focus. And this is really hard to do, but in those early days, there's so few resources, so few team members, and not usually very much money. So you have to focus. And I think something that's really special about Zoom is they focused on their customers from day one, and they also focused on getting things in the hands of people who used and loved the product, and it grew up within their organization. So you can see in 2016 was one of the first years all these lists started coming out, the fastest growing enterprise apps, and Zoom was at the top of those lists time and time again in 2016. Fast forward just a few years, because of their focus on customer happiness, their focus on a product that worked, and their focus on that growth strategy led them to be on the floor of NASDAQ in 2019. Another example about focus that might be more tangible because it's a much earlier stage company, so really relatable for early stage founders in the room. Eden is a leading platform for workplaces, and they help to manage any kind of service or any kind of support you might need in your office. So they have a marketplace and a platform for any office and any property building. And they're live in 65 metros all around the US. When we first funded Eden, it was a traditional consumer business. And within 6 months, they very famously pivoted, which was covered by a lot of news outlets, to a pure enterprise model. And they focused on that aggressively and have been growing rapidly ever since. And they knew at that time that they couldn't focus on B2C and B2B. They had to choose one. So for founders that are starting a company and trying to decide, is it a B2B model? Is it a B2C model? Is it a B2B2C model? You have to really kind of choose what you think your background is the best for and what you think your product is the best for. And you really just have to go for one, because if you can't focus on one, you're really not going to be good at either. And so choosing and focusing on kind of the right customer base and where you funnel your resources at the early days is super important. And the 8th thing I'll talk about, and the 8th reason your startup will succeed, is selecting the right mentors for you and avoiding something we call mentor whiplash. So I started the presentation today with talking about the lens that I carry into this conversation today. So you already know the types of companies that I work with and the types of companies that I see, and you can use that lens to filter the advice that I'm sharing today. And I think it's important to follow that process with anybody that you're asking for advice for your business. So think about what's their lens that they're bringing to the conversation, and do they know how to build a business like yours or tackle a challenge or a problem specifically like yours. And the concept of mentor whiplash is people that have been successful often think that the way they've done things is the way things should be done. And so you hear these different pieces of feedback and advice that might be really valid, but they also can be conflicting. And so early stage founders have this kind of ping pong effect of looking from one mentor to the other. One of the ways that we really encourage founders to circumvent this mentor whiplash is if you have advisors you really trust, get them in the room or get them on the phone together and have them share that advice kind of in real time, which really helps a founder kind of analyze and figure out what the right path forward is instead of pinging back and forth from mentor whiplash. And a related topic is investors. Investors are just kind of the next level mentors for your business. So there's more capital. These are just a handful of the firms that we invest with really regularly. And there's more investors now and there's more money than ever before. So thinking about the right target for your business. And that means the right partner at the right firm, that does the right sector, that writes checks at the right stage, that's interested in a business like mine. And so you really have to think about what's that right target investor for me, and think about the funding kind of within that context. I've already shared, of course, like the Maven Ventures focus. And so for folks that might be in areas that we don't cover, there's more seed funds than ever before that are looking across, other enterprise sectors, data and security, cybersecurity, kind of deep AI funds, deep big data funds, which are areas that we might not necessarily do as much of. And so thinking about how can you get the landscape of all of the investors and choosing the right targets for yourself. I spend a lot of time sharing ideas around fundraising strategy and fundraising advice on Medium. And one of the things that I wanted to just touch on quickly today is the idea of optimizing your funding round. And I think there's a lot of different factors that can go into funding round. There's a lot more I could say about this, so I just threw up a link if anybody's interested in looking at more. But one of the most common things I hear from early stage founders is, but I don't want to sell so much of my company, but I'm worried about the valuation. And so I think it's important to just think about the fact that valuation is really important to you and all of your investors, but it also doesn't live in a vacuum. And it has to be balanced with the investor and how much they're willing to put in and how much ownership of your company they might need. And also things like, are you willing to compromise on your round size or the speed of getting your round done or the exact best investor fit if you're most interested in valuation. So thinking about the different levers and how they might live kind of in context and in balance with others. And so if you do all 9 of these things, startups are a really hard thing to build from the ground up into success. So you might have a chance for success. And before I go on to the last one, I think I should have time, for a couple of questions. I'm looking for time in the back. I can't tell. So think about your questions. If you have questions, just pop over here to the mic because I'll be done in just a second. So happy to take any of those if folks do have questions. So if you've done all 9 of these things, you have a chance at success in the startup world. And the 10th thing is luck. And I think it's important for investors to share and for startup founders to realize any investor that's been successful or any startup company that's been successful is massively lucky. Maybe it's around the market, maybe it's around competition, maybe it's around timing. There could be a lot of things maybe it's the capital markets. So there could be a lot that factors into that. But I do think luck favors the hard worker. So I think you can always keep your mind open for new market opportunities, for new funding sources, for new competitive changes, so that if something happens, you're ready and you're in a position to take advantage of that great luck, which we've seen time and time again in all of the successful businesses that we've been a part of, is founders that are really ready and poised to take advantage of that luck when it strikes. This is a recap of the top 10 things: a vision worth fighting for, a founding team that has somebody who can see the vision, sell the vision, and build the vision, a culture that's unique to you, achieving product market fit, a team that can really accelerate and grow, Silicon Valley is overlooked language market fit, focusing on what you think is best for you and your business, avoiding mentor whiplash, identifying the right investor targets, and being ready to take advantage of luck and timing when it strikes. One quick note is we have a conference coming up next week. It's called the Hypergrowth Conference. There's a discount for anybody that would like to attend. We dig into a lot of these topics much more deeply at that conference. And feel free to reach out to me on Medium, on Twitter, where I share kind of other thoughts on startups as well. So those are the top 10 reasons that your startup will succeed by Maven Ventures. Thank you guys for being here. With that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Sara. My question is more on the typical fund size, and there's a seed and pre-seed nowadays. So where do you see the information you presented going to be fit at, like at seed stage or pre-seed? And what's typical Maven fund size for seed and pre-seed?
Yeah, so I would say seed is, anything that's under kind of the first $4 million or less that your company raises, but often most founders are raising multiple rounds these days. And so usually I would say like a pre-seed round is something that's under $1 million, and anything that's kind of in this like $1 to $3 million range is a seed round. I think as you get much above 3.5, 4 and above, that's a bigger check. So I think the fund size is a really important factor around that. So our current fund is $50 million. That's a true seed fund, but we're also very concentrated. I think any fund that's really much above $100 million isn't playing at that seed stage. Anything that's much above kind of 50 or so isn't doing a lot of pre-seed. So I think you can kind of filter it that way.
Hi, Sara. So for pre-seed, as you mentioned, like what's the stage that you look at for a company? Is it when they have a little bit customer traction, or what should the founders do? Like for you, especially for that. And secondly, let's say they don't have the customer traction, if the product is still is being built. Should they still do like friends and family round before they go to like let's say Maven Ventures for?
Yeah, so when we do pre-seed investing, which we do, it typically is like a $500K check, and often one of two things or both of these things is true. Sometimes it's a team we've known and worked with before, so we just know what it's going to be like to work, and it's easier for us to place a bet on that team. When I meet somebody and they're like, oh, this is a bet on the team, I'm like, that only works if I know your team. So if I'm meeting you for the first time, harder to place a bet on a team. And so team is one thing if it's somebody we know and kind of have worked with before. The second thing is if it's a problem we've just thought about a lot. Oftentimes we'll have companies where we'll come up with these ideas, and because of this unique lens towards future and emerging consumer trends, we think about these ideas and we see these visions before they become reality. So sometimes we'll have an idea that we've focused on, that we've just thought a lot about, and when we see a credible team with a vision worth fighting for going after that can be kind of a pre-seed bet for us. So those are usually kind of in the $500K. Sometimes a little bit more money will kind of come in with that, but that tends to be how we think about it. And so I think oftentimes if you find a true pre-seed fund that's really all they do, they're willing to take a bet on a kind of a team and an idea. But I think the best way to put yourself in that position is to have a really meaningful vision worth fighting for, that people are compelled by, it could be a true billion-dollar opportunity, and a team that can kind of see the vision, say the visions, and build the vision. And if you have those two things together at the seed stage, I think that's probably your best bet to get funded that early.
One follow-up, like is single founder a big no-no for you, just one founder?
Not necessarily, especially if that founder is capable of building the product as well, but it is a lot harder. And so we do like to see two-person co-founding teams. We don't have a hard and fast rule on that, and we've been successful with single founders in the past, but it's hard to do.
Hi, excellent talk. I'm coming from a context of a startup which is growing fast and it's got a global use case. And in a Series A scenario, probably a pre-Series B scenario, looking at investments which are being offered by strategic investors in different countries, for example, in China or Israel, and who are potential customers or potential channel partners offering to invest in the company. Do you have a view on that in terms of how that acts out in the growth scenario for the company?
Sorry, it's a little hard to hear you. Are you asking about whether Series A investors want to see direct channels and customers?
No,
maybe stand a little closer to the mic.
I'm talking in terms of I'm talking in terms of the opportunity for a startup where the Series A is being offered by a potential channel partner in one of these China's and Israel's and Saudi Arabia's, so on and so forth.
Got it. So we often have strategic investors, so corporate or channel partners, invested in our companies, usually around the Series A, but we don't see a lot of them coming into lead. I think if it depends on your exact kind of environment and the dynamics and what other investments that they've made. Oftentimes what we like to see is if there's going to be one strategic partner involved, we like to have a couple, and then that just takes away the kind of tension of having like one direct partner that can kind of own more of your destiny. And so usually we kind of have this like 0 or 2 sort of idea, 2 to 3, as we're thinking about investors in those types of round. And I think if, regardless of what it is, the best thing you can do is if you have to make that decision, is just back channel reference with other founders that they've funded in the past, those that have done well and those that have not done well, and get a sense of what that partner was like for them. And I think that'll probably provide better context on any kind of specific situation.
Hi, nice talk, and I like the slides very much. Based on what you have seen through Zoom and other hardware companies, so if you're a mobility tech company, would you encourage the company to do hardware, or would you say stick to software?
You know, I think part of it depends on your team, right? Do you have like a hardware team or do you have a software team? Our specific lens is we invest in software teams. And so all of our software teams, you know, Cruise Automation, Embark, which is the leader in autonomous trucks, May Mobility, which is the self-driving trucking or self-driving shuttle company. So when we look at those teams, we're investing in the software teams. And I think there have been some, you know, sensor companies, LiDAR companies, other hardware specific companies that will see success. I think that just over time is more likely to become commoditized. So since we only do a few investments, we look for software teams that also need hardware, just because these businesses do require kind of taking off the shelf and maybe even a little bit of custom hardware. But our lens tends to be looking for software teams and software companies that can kind of grow, because the pricing for a lot of the hardware really is kind of coming down over time, and we've seen that happen dramatically even just since 2014.
Thank you.
Hi, so we have a consumer platform that we've already launched on Android and iOS, and the question is, should we perfect it more before we advertise more, or do we advertise and keep perfecting?
Yeah, I'll go back to my point around product market fit. So in the really early days, if you have a live consumer product, you're looking for product market fit, and you're looking for a group of customers who love your product and would be really sad to see it go. And so if you have that, and there are lots of customers like them, your product is going to be growing and you're not going to be able to keep up. And so I would think that's what you're searching for, and you want that product market fit before you think about advertising and growing the business. And so generally, without having much more context around the business, that's how I'd be kind of thinking about it, is at the really early stage you're looking for, do we have that product market fit? Kind of, is the market pulling it from us instead of us pushing it onto them? And have we identified this true North Star metric, and we know how to drive that metric? I think that's the point at which you want to look at growth.
So if you have a total addressable market of billions of people who can use your app and interact with it on it, you know, things like Twitter and Facebook and all, at what time do we approach you for or pitch to you in your fund?
I think when there's something that you know that's working is when you want to start thinking about investing, right? So that you found something that you just know is working, and whatever that thing is, you're now trying to find capital to fuel it even further. And so usually that's the kind of thing that we're looking for with a consumer platform. It is just so sad. It's so hard to get consumer attention these days, because people have Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, and they have so many places that they spend time on their mobile devices today. And so it is hard to build a brand new consumer, particularly like a consumer social platform. So we see a lot of those, and we still retain a lot of enthusiasm that there will be new consumer software products and kind of new consumer opportunities. I think you just have to have a vision worth fighting for, kind of a team that can execute against it, and then some idea of kind of why aren't existing solutions good enough? Does this problem kind of really need to be fixed? And
yes,
go through some of those filters that I talked about.
That's how we started. I mean, so we have a patent pending, and we've been working for 3 years on this and file. The architecture is something like group planning and trip planning, which cannot be done by chat apps and the Luminary watching apps. You know, it's different. It's collaborative and it's tools.
I'm happy to chat a little bit. I don't want to take too much of the other questions' time and everybody about kind of the specific business, but I'd be happy to chat a little more. And I think my advice kind of around consumer in general just kind of fits this same lens of articulating that vision we're fighting for that's really meaningful and that's not solved in a way that's good enough today, and why your team's going to spend the next 10 years kind of going towards solving that problem. So without kind of digging further into it, just for the sake of fitting other questions, and I'd kind of go back exactly through those same lens we talked about.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing it with us.
Hi, Sarah. I had a question about product market fit. You did kind of answer part of it there, but So for those products that don't have that natural pull from customers, I know you say you don't want to push onto them, but in your experience, for any products you might have seen, if there isn't that natural pull, what, in your opinion, is the best option to kind of get in that market? Is it pushing or perhaps pivoting to try to address a different market or tweak your current service?
I think it's really understanding your user and their problem. So like, what's the problem you're solving for them? Why are existing solutions that they're using or that are out there not good enough? And why are they going to take the chance on trying your product instead? And so I think at the early days of consumer, that's what you're kind of trying to get at, is like, what's this problem? Why aren't existing solutions good enough? Why is my solution going to be different? And why is somebody going to go through kind of trusting and trying and adopting and going down the path of kind of engaging with my product? And so if you haven't kind of figured that out yet, I'd spend time really understanding kind of that consumer problem and really what's the solution that you're trying to approach to them. I think you don't want to pivot too early, right? You don't want to kind of think, oh, this isn't working here, let me go try something else. Right. I think you want to be more kind of user-centric and get a sense of like what's the customer problem that you're trying to solve rather than a solution looking for a problem.
All right, thank you. And then quick follow-up, just when you are kind of testing that market to see if you have that pull, in your opinion, what's the best way to kind of test that water to kind of see, is there a desire here? Because obviously you can think you are, saturating the market, but you don't really know. Would you just say kind of go out and ask people?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have to get kind of your first small base of customers. Some people do some people will do it by launching in schools, if that's, or like wherever your customers hang out, think about where are those customers already today online or in real life. Like, are they in high schools, colleges, post-secondary? Are they in seniors' homes? Are they like, where are they hanging out physically? And then also, where do they hang out online? Are they Redditors? Are they on Twitter? Are they still on Facebook and Instagram? And you can kind of try to acquire small pools of users that way. And so figuring out, can you just figure out where your customers are in the real world and online today and acquire small groups of them to get them to try your product, and you'll know kind of when it's working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sara, for your talk and your top 10. Can you also give if this same top 10 would map to the top 10 to succeed for VCs? Would the same top 10 translate for VC success? Say you were listing these out for a VC who's raising a fund.
So for someone raising a fund.
Right.
I mean, the VC success is really different. So my thought on that is, VC is a really special and privileged job to get to work with early stage founders who actually do the hard work. But at the end of the day, I'm a money manager. And anybody that gave me $1 expects that I'm going to give them back at least 3. And so anybody that's thinking about getting into venture, realize that the idea of like working with startups is amazing, finding early founders with passion, like they literally bring their life's work and they like put it on the table in front of you. And they're like, can you help me with this? And like a couple times a year I get to say yes, and that's amazing. But at the end of the day, that's all in service of the people who have trusted me with their capital and my own money that I invest in the fund, and knowing that more money has to come out of that than we put in. And so I think the number one thing is understanding the financial aspect of it as a money manager, and really knowing that your business is to return somebody else's capital. And so I think that that's kind of the starting point. And then from there, I think a lot of this stuff is probably really similar. Number one, you have to have a vision worth fighting for. Like with so many other VC funds in the world, like what's your vision? What's the unique thing that you're bringing to the table that doesn't exist today? So what's the vision worth fighting for your fund? And then the second thing is, can the team execute? Can your team work together over many years to come and actually deliver those returns to limited partners? And I think when people are looking at VC funds, those are the first couple of things that they're looking for as well. Yeah.
So, Sara, can you handle one more, or we don't want to wear you out?
I can do one more, sure.
Yes, this is the last question.
Okay.
One more. So for founding team, like, is there anything that specifically that you look for? Like, for example, some VCs look for, are they complementary skill sets? Like, do you think like having like head of sales right from the beginning as a co-founder, especially B2B, does that matter, or do you want to have vision as the highest priority rather than the complementary skill sets?
Yeah, so we need to have both. So when we're looking at a team, we have to have vision and founding team, and vision and founding team. And so we are typically not the fund that's going to say it's just a bet on the team. It's going to be the team and the vision. And so that, I think, sort of unique to us. And I think starting a company is kind of like starting a VC fund, in that you don't want to just get married to somebody just because people say that you need to have a spouse. Like, you don't want to get married to somebody just because people say that you need to have a co-founder. And so I think it has to be deeper than that. Somebody that you really think you can work with and lean on when things are really hard, and when they're going really well, that can kind of keep you humble and hungry. And so having a co-founder, that's the first criteria, not because people think you need a co-founder, but somebody that's really the right fit for you and the right fit for your business. And then I think from there, yes, complementary skills are really important, because somebody's going to be the CEO, and the other person needs to be okay with that and needs to be best in kind of a different role. And so thinking about that skill set and what people are doing from the outset is important. But I'd really start with, like, is this a person that you can, like, work late nights with for, like, many, many years to come?
Great. Thank you very much, Sara.
Thank you.